It's another edition of Jen's PlayStation 2 favorites from high school, and today we're piecing together Dark Cloud. Dark Cloud was published by Sony in 2001, making it a PlayStation 2 exclusive. So, the intro to this game looks like it could be a Lady Gaga dance rehearsal, but believe me, this game is spectacular. Dark Cloud is different. Even looking back on it today, the game is still in a category all its own. This was Level 5's first venture into game development, and they set their expectations incredibly high. When you add everything up, you get an action role-playing survival SimCity game. That sounds impossible to pull off, and that the overall experience would seem broken, but Dark Cloud is just wonderfully structured. Dark Cloud is about a fairy tale world that's been divided down the middle into two main sectors. The more technological side, which, by the way, is led by a character that's dressed like a Nazi, decides to summon this giant dark genie to destroy the nature side, probably to clear some space for a new Volkswagen plant. Dark Cloud's plot makes me laugh because it's about revering nature and bringing down technology, but in reality, I was playing it on my video game console using electricity and completely missing out on the outdoors. Contradictions aside, you start off in one of the towns as it's being destroyed, and you really can't do anything as Hellfire picks off your friends and family. Luckily, there's a fairy king who manages to preserve every aspect of what was blown to itty-bitty bits and stores them in spheres that you will later search for in dungeons. I don't think you can be a distinguished king with the title of fairy, and I now know why Zelda consistently took it to the female gender. While playing Dark Cloud, you have a lot to think about. Your weapon has HP and it'll break when it reaches 0, you have to replenish water to keep from being dehydrated. It's hack and slash, but in a more complex sense. After years of newer games coddling me, providing me with an unending supply of health and promising me that other games out there aren't really as hard as I remember, I think I've gone soft. I feel like a video game training montage is in my near future. One cheap trick they use to keep you from just rushing past every enemy and opening chests like a sly thief is that progression to the next level of the dungeon is dependent on finding a key hidden in one of the many monsters. Sometimes when you pop into a level, certain status effects take place. For example, you can lose hydration faster, or your currently equipped weapon is the only one you can use, so you better keep up the repairs. Oh, and I almost forgot to mention, every level of every dungeon dynamically changes upon revisit. If you come back to a previously beaten dungeon, it's structured in a completely different manner. I know I'm not the only one out there who's a massive fan of this style of design. As you progress through the dungeons, you collect pieces of the world, make it out of the dungeon alive, and you're pumped and ready for some feng shui. That's right, you get to assemble parts of the town and place them in the appropriate spot. Each structure requires you to collect specific pieces for completion. It sounds tedious, I know, and I'm sure there are people out there who absolutely abhor Dark Cloud for forcing them to optimize each village's layout, but it's all in the spirit of the game. You're literally putting the world back together. I personally quite enjoyed it, but I know not everyone has a penchant for organization like I do. The idea of taking some time from destroying monsters to reposition a windmill in the perfect spot is quietly satisfying. Each townsfolk has their own idea of what should go where, and there's a way to satisfy everybody, but that requires a little deductive reasoning. Once certain key buildings have been correctly placed, you can progress into the next area that requires rebuilding. I do have one slight issue with Dark Cloud. There isn't any voice acting in the game. All dialogue is conveyed via text. I know there are a million ways that voice acting can go wrong, but I wish Level 5 had taken a stab at it. Dark Cloud is so rich in the character development department that I'd love to have a voice to go along with all the dialogue provided. Come to think of it, maybe I just hate reading. It would explain my lack of novels and large collection of comics. Dark Cloud is another one of those games that's been around for a decade and still manages to impress me. This title began my unhealthy obsession with developer Level 5, whose name you might recognize from the opening sequence of any Professor Layton title. Level 5 continues to put out quality games that I would happily recommend to anyone. This game, though, consistently stands out as an amazing addition to any PlayStation 2 game collection. So I say get this game, but before you play it, make sure to hug a consenting tree.